My phone rang in the middle of the night. That was not unusual at my age. Folks assume a call after midnight always means somebody is gone. But I promise you, I stopped breathing before I even reached for it. Because the name lighting up that black screen was my son's. My son who had been buried 20 years ago in New Orleans, in a closed casket. My son who did not have a working number in this world anymore. The phone kept ringing. Slow. Long. Like it was calling from somewhere heavy. I did not answer. I could not move. My hands were shaking so hard I had to hold my own wrist like it was something alive. The ringing stopped. Silence. Then a voicemail. 32 seconds long. I pressed play. A breath. A living breath. Not static. Not recorded. A breath that knew me. Then a voice that whispered, low and uneven, like somebody with water in their throat, "Ma." I threw the phone across the living room floor. I screamed inside my own body without a sound coming out. Because that was his voice. That was my boy at 17. And I know the dead do not age. They do not grow. They do not move forward. But that was him. Young. Just how he was the day the coroner zipped him up inside that black bag. I was on my knees now. On my living room rug. The world around me bending. The kind of fear that does not let you pray. A grief so heavy it locks your mouth shut. Then my phone rang again, same name, same number, the number I had memorized before he even died. The one I never deleted. Because a mother who buries a child holds on to what she can. Even if it is frozen inside a phone that no longer dials. This time, I answered. I did not say hello. I did not breathe. I just listened. Nothing came through. Not a voice. Not a breath. Just the sound of wind. Like somebody walking. On gravel maybe. And then the call ended itself. Not hung up. Just taken away. That was 31 nights ago. My name is Laverne. I am 68 years old. Born and raised in Mobile, Alabama. I live alone now, in Charlotte, North Carolina. I am a retired nurse. I do not scare easy. I do not imagine things. And I buried my only son when I was 48 years old. They said he died in a car accident. They said his body was burnt too far gone to open the casket. I listened. I obeyed. I trusted the family that handled everything before I even arrived at the hospital, but that call. That voice. It tore the lid off a silence I have carried 20 years like a wound I pretend is a scar. I sat in the dark for hours that night. No television. No lamp. Just me and the hum of the refrigerator. Waiting for the phone to ring again. It did not. The next morning, I drove straight to the cemetery. I had not gone in 13 years. Not because I did not love my boy. But because once a mother realizes the dirt does not answer back, she stops visiting dirt. I stood above that headstone. And I said these words with a voice I did not recognize. If you are not in that ground, Lord Jesus, tell me where they put my son. The ground did not shake. The birds did not move. Nothing supernatural came toward me. But my spirit did not settle. And I have learned, as an old woman, to obey what does not settle. So I drove back home. I made a fresh pot of coffee. And I did what any mother with a not in her spirit would do after 20 years of trusting the wrong people. I called the only person who was at that hospital before me. My sister-in-law, Marigold. She answered too fast. Like she was already holding the phone. Like she was expecting me. Laverne? You all right? I did not greet her. I did not pretend I was calling to check on her health. I spoke slow. Careful. Like a woman aiming a gun without wanting to alert the target. I got a phone call last night, I said. A pause. From who? She said, from Jermaine's number. Dead silence. But I swear I heard her breathe hard through her nose. Like somebody swallowing a scream. That is not funny, Laverne, she said. Cold. Not startled. Not confused. Just angry that I had said it out loud. I did not say it was funny, I said. Another pause. Heavy this time. Like something alive entered that quiet. Then she said the words that froze my whole spine in place. You answered it? Not, what are you talking about? Not, that is impossible. Not even, Laverne, calm down. Just, you answered it? I did not respond, and then she whispered something so low, I almost believed I imagined it. You was not supposed to pick up. She hung up. My heart stopped. My breath stopped. My entire body went still. Because those were not the words of a woman confused. Those were the words of a woman caught, and right then, I knew something I had never dared let myself believe. My boy might not be dead. Or worse. He might not have died the way they said he did. Something kept from me, something staged, something buried, and if that is true, then I had been living 20 years inside somebody else's lie. Suddenly, every memory I had buried with mercy began unearthing itself without permission. The closed casket. The rushed funeral. The sudden insurance payout processed before I signed anything. The way Marigold would not let me see him at the hospital. How she stood in front of the curtain. How my husband refused to look me in the eye for days. I went cold, not afraid, not sad, cold, because somebody, planned something against me. And I had let it live untouched for 20 years. I stood up. I walked to my son's old room. I opened the closet. His shoes were still on the top shelf. The pair I refused to donate. I held them to my chest. And that was when my knees gave out completely, because inside that shoe was something that should not have been there. A folded slip of paper from the funeral home, not addressed to me, addressed to Marigold, and dated 2 days before my son supposedly died, and the funeral costs already fully paid. My hands were still pressed against that old carpet when I realized I had stopped feeling the floor. If everything went cold, not the kind of cold that comes from fear, the kind that comes from truth. The kind that comes from a woman realizing she has been played. Not tricked. Played. Long term. Carefully. Patiently. I unfolded that funeral slip with both hands because I did not trust my fingertips to hold it steady. My son's name was printed. The funeral home address was correct. But the date, 2 days before the night they called me, 2 days before they said my baby died, 2 days before the police arrived too late to save him. Paid in full. By Marigold Bennett, not my husband. Not me. Not even the insurance. She paid. Before the death. I did not cry. I did not shake. I felt my heart beat slow. For the first time in 20 years, I knew for a fact that something was planned before I even got a phone call. I stood up slow. My bones cracked in my knees, but I stood tall. I pushed that shoebox back in its place and closed the closet door as if I were afraid someone was watching. I turned off every light in the house and sat back down in the dark like I had when the call first came, but now I was not waiting. I was remembering, not with grief, with intelligence, and my God. Things started lining up like they had always been in formation. Just waiting on my mind to get sober enough to see it, the hospital curtain she blocked me from crossing, the way she held my wrists and said, "Laverne, do not look. You do not want that image in your head forever." The way she signed every paper before I even got a pen in my hand, but then told everyone she was saving me from pain, how my husband, my own husband, refused to let me go inside the funeral office when they were confirming the casket, how nobody, let me touch him, and then how every year on his death date, she called before I even opened my eyes. Every year, never missed, like she was checking the lock on a gate. I reached for my phone again, not to cry this time. To call that number back. My son's number. It rang once, twice, then straight to voicemail, but this time, the voicemail was not empty. It was breathing again, closer, but then, something else. A sound like keys of metal, and then, clear as day. A woman's voice, not my son. A woman whispering into the phone like she was inches away from it, too close, too bold. "Mama. Do not trust them." The voice was not my son's, but she called me Mama, and she sounded terrified. Then the line cut, just gone. No static. No fade. Gone. I stayed frozen so long my legs hurt. Then I went to the kitchen. No rush. No panic. I poured myself water. No trembling. No spill. For the first time, I was not grieving my son's death. I was questioning if I ever buried him at all. I took my car keys. I did not even grab a coat. I stepped outside into that Carolina night as if somebody was waiting for me, or watching me leave, because if that voice was real, and that funeral was signed before he died, then I had been sleeping next to a lie for half my life. I drove to Marigold's house. She lived 11 minutes from me. I had never noticed how close she really was. Or how every road that led from my street, past hers first, her Lights were still on at 2 in the morning, her car in the driveway, front porch light on like she was expecting company. No fear, just calculation. I turned off my car and did not step out right away, because in that moment, as I gripped that steering wheel, I was no longer a broken mother. I was a woman who had been chosen as a target, and I was about to find out why me and what they did with my son. Before I moved, her front door opened. She stepped out, slow, not shocked, not confused, like she knew I was coming, and she smiled, not scared, not guilty. Ready. As if this meeting was 20 years late, then she said, calm as prayer, you should have never answered that phone, Laverne. And she walked back inside, leaving the door wide open, waiting for me to follow. But that whole house felt wrong, not unsafe, wrong, like I was not walking toward danger, but toward truth, the kind that does not give you your life back once you see it. I stepped toward that door anyway, because whatever was inside, I needed more than air. The night air felt heavier the moment I stepped across her doorway. Not warm, not cold, just weighted. Like the kind of silence that knows you are walking straight into history, not a conversation. She had already turned her back to me before I even crossed the threshold. Did not greet me. Did not offer water. Did not act like a woman afraid of being accused. No. She moved the way people move when the script is already written, and I am late to my own scene. Her living room was dim. Only one lamp turned on in the far corner, the kind of yellow light that made everything look older. Pictures covered her walls. Not family photos. Not graduations. Not weddings. Just landscapes. Generic pictures. Like someone staged this house to look safe. Like someone removed the real life out of it. Close the door, she said without looking back. I did not obey immediately. I just stood there watching her. Because something in me had shifted completely. I had been afraid for 20 years. But standing in her house right then, I realized she was not afraid of me. And perhaps that should have been the thing that frightened me the most. You said he called you, she continued, pouring herself tea from a pot that had already been steaming before I arrived. My jaw tightened. You knew he would. She exhaled slow. Not rattled. Not guilty. Just irritated, like I had ruined timing. You were not supposed to answer that phone, Laverne. I stepped closer. Why? She still did not face me. She stirred her tea. One slow circle. Like we were having a quiet evening chat. Like my son's name was not floating between us like a ghost waiting to speak. He was supposed to leave the message, she said. That was it. My throat locked. He? She finally turned. That was when I saw it. The first sign of something real in her eyes, not evil, not remorse of fear. You were not supposed to interrupt it before it finished, she said. Now, it activated the other line. Before I could speak, my phone vibrated in my hand. I looked down, same number, his number. I froze. A marigold. Do not answer. It, she said sharply. My thumb was already there. She stepped forward. Faster than I expected a woman her age could move. Snatched the phone from my hand with a grip so tight I gasped. She rejected the call, then turned the phone completely off. Her chest was moving. Not with calm now. For the first time in 2 decades, she looked unsettled. I did not blink. Where is my son? She stared at me, did not lie, did not pretend misunderstanding. She looked directly into my eyes, and said with a voice steadier than mine. He was not supposed to die that night. That sentence tore the entire world open. I gripped the back of her dining chair to steady myself. Because the room was shifting under me. He was not dead when y'all took him from that car. I said. She did not argue, she did not defend herself. She set her teacup down and held the edge of the table like she, too, needed to anchor her body. There were people involved you do not want to meet. Laverne. My vision blurred, not from tears. From rage. You buried my child alive? She flinched, not from guilt. From the truth finally being said out loud. I tried to save you from them, she said quietly. That was the only thing I could do. I stepped forward. Slow. Deadly calm. Save me? You had him taken? She opened her mouth, but a noise stopped her. A knock. 3 soft taps against her front window, not door. Window. We both turned. My breath disappeared. Someone was standing outside, not walking up. Already there. A shadow, tall, still, watching. Marigold's entire body went rigid, her voice dropped lower than a whisper, do not look at them. I was already looking. They did not move, they did not threaten, they just stood, watching, like they were confirming my arrival. She moved toward me quickly, not with panic, but with precision. They already know you know. My voice was no longer a voice, it was a blade. Where is my son? Marigold. She hesitated. I stepped closer. Close enough to smell whatever was on her breath, mint, tea. Something herbal. Then she said it barely above a breath, he is not in any grave. My hands closed against my sides so tight I felt my own fingernails in my palm. And you need to pray, she whispered, that he is still alive enough to call you again. The knock returned once, not desperate summoning. She glanced toward the window. Fear, real fear, sat on her like ice. Then her voice shifted low and heavy, like a final warning. If they realize you are looking for him, they will show you why they took him. I turned fully toward the window, and this time, the shadow moved, not walking, tilting its head. As if curious. As if waiting for me to open the door. My pulse slowed. Not fast. Slow. Like prey realizing it is being watched. Then Marigold said one last thing, and for the first time, her voice broke. Laverne, I did not betray you. I hid him. The lights in her house flickered. Power cut out. Darkness, silence, except one sound. I in the dark. My dead son breathing inside my phone. The darkness did not feel like a power outage. It felt intentional, the kind of darkness that listens. I did not move. I did not breathe too loudly. The silence inside that house was not empty, it was occupied. There was a presence. Not imagined. Not emotional. Present. I could feel it. Standing just beyond what I could see. Marigold did not scream. She did not run. She reached, blind, for my wrist. Her grip was steady. As if she had rehearsed this exact moment in her mind for years. Do not turn toward the door, she whispered. They want to see your reaction. If you react, they will move. My heart no longer beat fast. It beat controlled. That is when I knew grief had been replaced. Something far older had woken up in me. Something protective. Something ancient. A mother. She guided me back, step by step, toward the hallway. The darkness moving with us like it had breath. And I swear, I could hear the faintest rhythm outside the walls. Not footsteps. Not breathing. Watching. Close enough to hear us. Close enough that if I screamed, they would arrive before the echo. We reached the narrow hallway that led to her back rooms, where no windows faced the street. She opened a door I had never seen before. Not a bedroom. Not a bathroom. A closet, but behind the coats, a second door. She turned to me. You have one question you can ask, she whispered. After that, you must leave talking behind. You listen only. If you speak again, they will change their plan. My voice came out calmer than I thought it would. Is my son alive? She held my gaze and nodded. My knees nearly buckled, not from grief, but from confirmation. 20 years of imagined conversations. 20 years of dreams where he was still somewhere breathing. And in one silent nod, all of it collapsed into reality. She opened the hidden door. It did not lead outside, not yet. It led to a narrow passageway behind the walls. Dark, but not cold. The kind of confined space designed not for storage, but for hiding. The air tasted old. Sealed. Like this place had not been touched in years. Marigold stepped inside first. Once we walk through, she said quietly, everything you think you knew about that night will stop being a memory and start being evidence. There will be no going back. That word hit me like a bell. Evidence, not suspicion, not doubt. Evidence. I stepped inside, the door closed. No light. No sound. Only the sound of our breathing against wood. We moved slowly. Single file. My hand on the wall. The passage was narrow, but long. Far longer than any space inside a single house should be. As if it connected more than one home. As if this path had existed long before I ever moved to this neighborhood. How long have you known? I asked before I could stop myself. She stopped walking. I nearly ran into her back. Then she said something that made my spine lock. I did not know, she said. Not at first. I believed the same lie you believed. I waited, she continued, until I saw him. My throat dried. Saw him, for years after the funeral, she said quietly. Alive. With them. The wall against my hand suddenly felt like it was pulsing. Why did you not tell me? I whispered. She did not turn. They would have taken you too. Silence. Then, I was buying time. I almost collapsed. Buying time. 20 years, for what? We kept walking. The passageway dipped slightly, downward. The ground became packed earth under my shoes instead of wood or tile. The temperature changed, denser, warmer. I could hear something, not voices, ventilation, air. Moving. Artificial. Mechanical. We reached another door. She pressed her palm flat against it, not a knob. A sensor? Metal. Hidden. It clicked. A thin line of faint light appeared as it opened. We stepped inside. A basement, but not hers, not any home I had ever been inside. It was immaculate. Clean cement floor. Industrial. Cold efficiency. Not criminal in a sloppy, panicked way. Corporate. Planned. Sanitized. A place that had no business being beneath a residential neighborhood. And then I saw a photograph taped to the wall near the far corner. Old. A little faded, but I knew it even before my eyes adjusted. Fully. My son, age 11. Standing in our old backyard holding a toy airplane, not a school photo. A picture I took with my own hands. A picture only family would possess. My legs nearly gave out before I could speak. The air vent above us made a sound, not malfunction. A signal. 3 short bursts of air. Marigold's head snapped up. They know we are inside. That was when I heard it, not from above, not outside, from beyond the opposite wall. A voice, barely audible, weak, but alive. A man's voice saying one word, Mama? I knew that voice. I knew it more than my own. Jermaine? My mouth spoke without permission. Marigold grabbed my arm with terrifying strength. Do not move. Tears came before breath. 20 years of holding them back. And the first tear fell before I even inhaled. He was right there, alive, close, close enough that I could hear the second breath behind the word. He whispered again, Mama? Is that you? Every cell in my body screamed for me to run toward that wall, but Marigold looked terrified, not of being caught. Of what would happen if I touched that wall. And then, footsteps, not 2 people, not 3. At least 6. Descending from above, and now, the house did not feel like a house. It felt like a trap door in a theater that just opened for the final act, and I was no longer a grieving mother. I was a witness. I woke up the next morning with a heaviness in my chest that wouldn't lift, not even after I sat on the edge of my bed for a full minute rubbing my temples, hoping to shake it off like a bad dream. But it wasn't a dream. It was last night. It was what I said to my mama. It was the way she looked at me before she walked away. It was the kind of look that splits you in half, disappointment on one side, hurt on the other. For the first time in years, the house felt like it was holding its breath. I moved slow, taking every step down the hallway like the wood was made of glass. I could smell breakfast, not burnt this time, not thrown together or rushed. No, she'd made the real thing. Biscuits from scratch. Maple butter. Eggs the way I like them, soft scramble with that faint orange tint from smoked paprika. She hadn't made that since before everything went bad. I stopped at the dining room entrance and just watched her. She didn't look up. Didn't speak. Just placed the plate at my usual spot, then sat in the chair across from it. But left hers empty. She didn't make herself a plate. That hurt ate through me faster than anything she could have yelled. I sat down silently. My voice didn't work yet. She didn't look at me. Just tapped her nails gently on the table like she was trying to keep time. Then, she said it without looking, you can't take it back. I knew she meant last night. I swallowed hard. I know. Still no eye contact. Still tapping. Slower now, and I won't forget it. That one hit deeper. Shame burned through me like fever. But then, she finally looked up, and I wasn't ready. There was no anger. No fire. No tremble, only sadness, the kind that feels final. But I will let God deal with you before I do. I stopped breathing. Her voice was soft. Calm. Controlled. Words wrapped in grace and warning at the same time. Then she stood up. Walked right past me. Quietly. I turned in shock, thinking she was headed to her room. She wasn't. She went to the living room, kneeled right beside the couch, and started praying. Out loud. No, not quietly like she always did. She was praying like she was calling a courtroom into order. A spiritual subpoena, for me. By name, Lord, don't let my child be guided by bitterness. Remove any spirit trying to consume her mind. And if necessary, humble her before she harms herself. Every syllable felt like it was being carved into the walls. Tears filled my eyes before I knew it. I'd never heard her pray for me like that. Not sweet. Not blessing. Not gentle motherhood. Intercession, the kind reserved for children who are spiritually in danger, and don't know it. I backed out of that room like I'd just walked into holy territory uninvited, because I did. I went upstairs. Didn't eat. Didn't wipe my tears. Didn't even fully close my door, just slid down the wall and sat on the floor. Hearing my own mama praying defense against me made me feel like I had crossed into territory I didn't recognize myself in. But here's what I didn't know. She wasn't the only one who heard that prayer, because 2 minutes later, my bedroom door didn't knock. It opened, and my brother, the one I hadn't spoken to in 11 months, stepped inside like he owned the air. His first words, "What did you do to Mama?" He didn't wait for an answer, just shut the door behind him like he had every right to. Like we hadn't spent almost a year pretending the other didn't exist. He didn't look mad. He looked dangerous, not in a violent way. In a knowing way. The kind that tells you he has already decided who's right before you even speak. I said, "What did you do to Mama?" His voice was low. Controlled. Older than I remembered. He wasn't barking. He was measuring me. I stood too fast, wiping my face before he could see the proof. "I didn't do anything," I snapped. "Lie." And we both knew it. His eyes narrowed, but with something worse than anger, disappointment. "You made her pray out loud." That sentence hit different. You know why? Because in our house, out loud prayer was never for praise. It was war. He stepped forward. I accidentally stepped back. "You must have said something nasty," he said calmly, "because she called your name twice." My heart stopped. Twice meant spiritual emergency. I swallowed. My pride rose, not because I wanted it to, but because shame never walks in alone. "She's dramatic," I muttered. His jaw clicked. 3 silent seconds passed before he spoke again. "Say that again." He didn't move. But the air did. Shifted. Tightened. "You know that pressure that comes right before a thunderstorm? When even the birds go silent, that." I didn't repeat it, but I didn't apologize either. He stared at me like he was trying to see if I still existed under the thing I'd become. Then he said it, calm. Slow. Final. "You don't talk to Mama like she's one of your little friends." Ouch. I hated how fast those words burned me, because they were true. My defense rose anyway. "You stayed gone almost a year," I spat. "You don't get to walk in and act like what?" He cut in quietly. "Like I never stopped checking on her even when she said she was fine." Fresh wound. Direct hit. I had nothing. He stepped closer, his eyes did not blink. "You forgetting everything she did for you? Or you just got comfortable treating her like she owes you for existing?" Knife. Twist. Deep tears burned again, but this time from humiliation, not pain. I wanted to fight, but I couldn't. Not with him, because he wasn't yelling. He was accurate, too accurate. He looked at my desk. Saw the untouched sketchbook. The crumpled drawings. The drafts. He saw the proof of everything I'd been spiraling in. Then, his tone softened, just a fraction. "You're not the only one who's tired." That broke me more than anything else, because that sentence, that's what grown children say when childhood has ended, and you didn't even notice. My anger evaporated. Just like that, and in its place, grief. "I didn't mean it," I finally whispered. He nodded slowly. "I know you didn't mean to. But you did." And she heard it. And you don't get to leave a wound open just because it came from emotion. Silence. Then, he said the one thing I didn't expect: "She's leaving tonight." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Packing a bag right now." Quiet. Calm. Like she already decided. I didn't feel air anymore. "She said she's giving this house over to the Lord," he continued. "And that if he has to humble one of us, she will not stand in his way." No, that's code in Black Mama language. Translation: "The grace period is over. I need to see her." I breathed. "You do," he said. "But not talking. Not explaining. Not defending." He opened the door, go repent. Then speak. I froze, not apologize, repent. There's a difference, apology wants peace, repentance wants change, and as I walked down that hallway toward the sound of her soft praying, my legs were shaking. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid she'd yell. I was afraid she wouldn't. She did not stop praying when I reached her doorway, she did not even turn her head, she was on her knees by the edge of her bed. Suitcase half packed beside her, folded clothes too neat for someone in panic, and worst of all, she was calm, too calm. That is when you know a black mother is truly done. Lord, I release them, she was whispering. If the house I labored for has become a place of rebellion, then let your hand sweep whatever you must. I could not breathe, not because of what she said, because of what she did not cry, she did not ask God to protect me, she did not say my name. I stepped in. Quiet. As if the room itself demanded reverence. Mama? Her praying did not stop, her back remained turned. So I just knelt, something I had not done in front of her since I was a little girl with scraped knees. Mama? I am not here to explain, I forced the words out slow, careful like truth. I am here to repent. The room shifted, she stopped praying. But did not turn, she just went silent. That silence scared me worse than death. I kept going. My voice came cracked. Humble. Not rehearsed, I have acted like you owed me life. Like sacrifice was my birthright. And I forgot you are still a woman. Not just my mother. Her head tilted, just an inch, that was all I needed to continue. I sinned with my mouth. I disrespected the vessel that carried me. And I know I cannot take it back. But before you leave this house, I beg you, let me stand correct. She spoke, not loud, not soft, just sure, you are repenting to the wrong audience. Every hair on my neck rose. I knew what she meant God first, humiliation washed through me like fire. I closed my eyes and, for the first time in a long time, I prayed out loud, not pretty, not church-sounding, ugly. Sincere. Ashamed. Father, forgive me. For pride. For dishonor. For speaking death with my words. For forgetting she is your daughter before she is my mother. And as I said it, I broke the dam inside me. Split open, not gentle tears, not movie tears, collapsing. Tears, snot, airless. Heaving. Gut deep. I could not control it. I did not care to, and that was when she finally touched me, not hugged, not pulled close, just placed her hand on the back of my head. That was permission to cry, a permission to be a child for 60 seconds. Again then, she spoke. The sentence was so soft I almost missed it. You have one more person to face. I froze. I knew before I asked, who? She did not answer directly, she only whispered. The soul you buried alive. The air snapped. I looked up, suddenly afraid, not of her. Of the truth I had refused to look at for 20 years, because I knew exactly who she meant, and it was not just my brother. It was me. She stood, not weak, not dramatic, but like a woman who had been preparing her entire life for this moment. Her eyes finally met mine, and she said it clear enough to make my blood run cold. If you want God to restore what you thought was dead, you had better be ready to face what you allowed to be buried. And then, she stepped past me, out of the room, leaving me on that floor, not in guilt, not in shame, but in awakening, because this was no longer about apology, this was war for my own soul. For the first time since she walked out of that room, I was afraid of the quiet in our house, not the silence itself, but what it was holding. I had cried until my chest hurt. But now there was nothing left to cry, only a question: who did I bury? I stood from that floor on trembling legs. The house did not feel like mine anymore. It felt like a place waiting to witness something. I walked past her empty doorway, her suitcase gone. She was not in her room, she was not downstairs, she had left. Not permanently. I knew that kind of exit by instinct, but the message was carved in spirit, not in words. Move, face what you have been running from. Do not wait. I reached the end of the hallway, stopped dead. My son, the living one, was sitting in the dark on the staircase, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on me like he had been waiting. He did not stand. He did not speak. He just said, calm, low, do you finally see it? Not a question. A sentence, and he was not asking about Mama. He was asking about the 20-year-old coffin I kept pretending was not buried under my bones. Yes, I whispered. The first honest yes I had spoken about my first child since the day I put him in the ground. My son studied me. No pity. No comfort, just stillness. Then go, he said. There was no softness in it. It was not permission. It was command. I could not explain why, but I did not argue. I walked past him, out the front door. Night had fallen fast, streetlights flickered that sickly orange. For a moment I just stood in the cool air, breathing like a woman learning how lungs worked. Then my feet moved, not toward the church, not toward anywhere reasonable. They led me to the oldest part of town, where the road narrows, where there are no sidewalks, where the living do not walk unless they have to face the dead. The cemetery gate was already half open. Someone had been there recently. I pushed it the rest of the way and walked in. I did not need a flashlight. I knew the way in the dark. Every step I took, my pulse pounded one name: Caleb. 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 My firstborn. My boy, gone before he ever had a chance to speak his first word. I had buried him 20 years ago, and I had never come back, not once, not out of grief, out of rage. Atgod. Life. Myself. His little headstone had leaves pushed against it, untouched, forgotten by hands that claimed to love him. I dropped to my knees like the wind had punched me in the spine. My hands shook as I traced the carved letters. Calebi. I had never said his name out loud in 20 years. I did not even notice when it slipped from my mouth, raw, cracked. Caleb. I was not praying, not apologizing, not speaking poetry. I was just calling him. As his mother, for the first time since I put him in the earth. The wind moved, not soft, sharp. A gust that made the trees bend, and in that moment something hit me, vivid and violent. It was not just him I buried. I buried me, the version of me who still believed in joy. Who still believed God was kind, who still believed life gave back what you poured into it. I had not just lost a baby. I had killed a mother inside me, and replaced her with anger wearing survival as armor. My forehead touched the cold stone, and I said it. Truth that split bone. I could not love your brother right, because I never forgiven myself for losing you. The night did not comfort me. It did not answer back, but it received it, and that was enough. For the first time, I was not hiding from the dead. I was inviting the truth to judge me, and something shifted inside my chest, not healed, not redeemed, but cracked open, ready for the next blow. A sound snapped from somewhere behind me, not wind, not animal. A phone ringing. My whole body froze. Nobody else was in the cemetery. No cars nearby. No footsteps, just that sound. A ringtone, faint hold, the same one my firstborn had 20 years ago, even though he was buried with the phone still in his tiny blanket. It was ringing, now. I turned, slow, rigid. The sound was coming from the ground. Right where Caleb had been laid. I did not scream. I did not run. I just reached for the dirt with shaking, unbelieving hands. As the ringing continued. Closer. Louder. Unmistakable. My dead son was calling me, and I picked up the phone. I did not hear my own breath when I lifted that buried phone to my ear. I did not feel the cold anymore. My entire body was hollow, only one sound existed, the call connected. A click, then just air, empty, but alive, not static. Not a glitch, breathing, slow, fragile. Like a child sleeping on its stomach. Caleb. The name slipped out before I could think. Silence, then, a tiny shift, like fabric. Or a faint exhale. I closed my eyes. My voice shook, but I did not lower it. Caleb. Mama is here. I have never heard a silence so loud, and then, a whisper, not a word, not language, just a tiny, broken cried out, a newborn's cry, barely there, but there. My soul cracked open like lightning, split it. Baby. My voice failed. My baby? I am so sorry I left you here. I was shaking, but I did not let go. I held that phone like it was his hand. I was angry, I confessed, voice trembling. I buried more than you. I buried hope. I buried love. I buried forgiveness. I punished the whole world for taking you. Even your brother. The crying stopped then, one sound, not a cry, not human. A heartbeat, soft, steady, like his body was right there beneath my hand. I pressed my palm into the earth over his name, and I whispered, I am not here to ask God to reverse death. I am here to let him put me back to life. If I have to crawl to get there, I will. The heartbeat slowed. Then, silence, but this time, peaceful, not empty. The phone disconnected. Without a sound. I stayed right there, not moving, hands buried in the dirt that held what I lost, until I heard footsteps, not soft, dragging, not human paced, like someone being half carried. I turned. My breath left me again, but not in fear. In disbelief. My mother walking toward me, but not alone, she was holding my brother. My living son, her arm around him, and he was shaking, not crying, shaking. His eyes were wide, like he had seen something I was not supposed to know yet. Mama did not speak, she just stared at me, stare that told me this was no coincidence. Then she said one sentence, steady, unshaken. He heard it too. I looked at him. He would not meet my eyes, his lips moved, barely. I heard him. Ma. Caleb. He said it so soft it sounded like prayer. My living son was trembling with the same truth that had just hit me like a storm. My mother stepped back, giving us space, but not leaving, not this time. And right then I realized this was not haunting, this was summons. Judgment had begun, not on God's part, on ours. My son finally raised his head, tears in his eyes now, not weak, not bitter, awakened. Ma. We cannot leave him down there. He did not mean physically. He meant spiritually, emotionally, generationally. We had buried more than a child. We had buried our mercy, our softness, our ability to believe anything good could survive after pain. I nodded, slow, steady, for the first time, fully sober in my soul. We dig him up, I whispered. My son's breath shuddered. Yes. Not shovel, not dirt, truth. We dig up the truth. We lift what died in us. We break the curse, we let grow roots. My mother finally spoke again, soft, but terrifying in the clarity. Then speak the final thing you never said that day. My throat closed. I knew exactly what she meant, the last thing I refused to tell my son before I shut the coffin, words I was too angry to say then, but now, there was no choice. My voice trembled. But I said it, Caleb. I forgive you for dying. My body collapsed. My son caught me, the cemetery wind roared like something ancient had broken loose, and I knew, this was not closure, this was rebirth. I do not remember falling all the way to the ground, only the feeling that the earth finally received me. Not as punishment, but as witness. My son held my shoulders, steadying me, but not pulling me up. He understood, some prayers can only be spoken from the floor. The wind had stilled, even the night air felt like it was waiting. I wiped my face, not to hide the tears, but to clear my vision. I placed my palm back over Caleb's name, and this time, I did not speak as a grieving mother. I spoke as a living one. Caleb. I release you from the anger I chained you to. I release myself from the grave I built beside you. And I release this house, this bloodline, from the curse of silent heartbreak. My mother stood at the edge of the pathway, her head was slightly bowed. But she was watching me, watching to see if I would finally finish the thing she knew I had run from for 20 years. I took a breath, then another, then I turned, not to God first, but to my living son. He flinched, like he did not expect to be pulled into this moment. I stepped closer to him, hands still trembling, and I took his face in both my hands. No poetry, no softness, truth. I failed you. His eyes closed. His throat moved, but I am not going to fail you again. A tear fell before he could blink it back, and then the words that had been locked in his ribs for years finally broke free. I thought you wished it was me instead of him. The sound that left me was not even human. Pain, regret, love, all crashing as one. I pulled him into me, like I was gathering every version of him. Newborn, boy, teenager, wounded man, all at once. No, I cried into his shoulder. I wished it was me. Silence, then a single, strangled breath from him, the kind you release when a lie finally loses its power. My mother finally stepped forward. She did not interrupt, she just laid one hand on both of our backs, a blessing, not words, just covering. And right there, in the dark, in the cemetery, with no audience but God and the dead, we broke the curse, not by magic, not by miracle, but by refusing to keep living like the grave had more authority than love. I did not hear angels. I did not see light burst from the sky, but something heavy left us, for the first time in 20 years. It felt like the air could enter my body without fighting its way through stone. We stood there for a long time, breathing, existing, alive. When we walked back to the house, It did not feel haunted by heaviness anymore. It felt like a place that could recover. My mother went straight to the kitchen. Not to avoid us.to wait for us, because this was not repair in one night. It was beginning. My son sat on the couch. Eyes still wet, hands clasped together, like he did not quite trust the peace but was not rejecting it either. And me? I stood at the threshold of the house, hand on the doorframe, knowing. The chapter did not end here. Knowing. There was still healing to do, conversations to have, apologies to live out, not just speak, but for the first time in decades. I was not afraid to state out. I turned slightly, looking straight ahead, not at the past, not at the pain, but forward, and I said, low, unperformed, to whoever was truly listening, if you are still here with me, do not go anywhere. I want you to stay. Like, share. Tell me how old you are in the comments. If we are the same generation, I have something waiting for you next. Not marketing, not performance, just invitation. To walk into healing with me, and then I closed the door. Not behind me, but with me inside. Asterisk.